All good. So we are live in YouTube as well. Um,
Cool.
we have participants coming in. I think we can go ahead and start. Um,
Okay. Up
so
to you. I mean, let's go ahead.
we can let's wait 2 minutes and then we'll go ahead and start. If there's anybody would like to
Okay.
come into the webinar, we're live in YouTube as well. So yeah, we'll start in 2 minutes.
All right. Nice. Okay. So do you do that regularly with this kind of webinars?
So I mean, we started like 3 weeks ago, and it's becoming more and more like a twice a week thing. I kind of really enjoy it because it's also really interesting because like we're being talking a lot of like different ecosystem players in different countries. So it's quite interesting to
Hmm.
hear all of these insights and the ideas and also the how the adaptations are going. And each ecosystem has a different interest. Um,
Sure.
so over the next I think 3 weeks more, we're gonna do twice a week. But we are just focusing on now the European region. So
Hmm.
next week we're doing Netherlands, then France, and then we have UK, Finland, and then the next week afterwards we're going back to Italy, then to we'll see, not confirmed yet. So, but yeah, I mean, this is sort of like a nice way of also bringing together all of these organizations into a collective conversation. That's the whole point of it. Um,
Yeah. It's
everybody.
nice. Nice idea.
Cheers. Cool. All right, so I think we can go ahead.
All
Um,
right.
so as I mentioned, I'm going to really quickly talk about what is Kök Project for our participants who are just joining in or the first time they're hearing about Kök Project or Agri-Food Connect. I'm going to talk about that really briefly. So what is Kök Project? So we are in a traditional sense an accelerator and a corporate innovation partner just for the agri-food sector. We only work with agriculture, food, and water sector startups and companies. That's our focus on. We cover all of the journey of food from the soil to the plate. And we work with startups, helping them to reach their potential and beyond. Our headquarters are based in Istanbul, but we are working on developing programs in various sections around the globe. So over the course of the months, as we all experience, the agri-food sector is changing with the new normal. We are talking about all of the adaptations, the changes, interests, and also we are seeing, a future coming quite early that is expected with the food sector. So we have been working on Agri-Food Connect program over the almost a month now. And the idea of it is to create a digital platform for all of these organizations working with the agri-food sector, but is also bringing together the startups, the corporate partners to develop solutions and adapt their novel products and services to the new normal. This program contains 4 steps. We are kicking it off with webinars, and the idea of it is to share the insights of our each local partner and also create the conversation around the food and agriculture. The next step will be we're going to move into the online sprint, where we're going to develop working on solutions and working together with the startups to integrate those solutions to the new norm. And the next step will be an agile mentorship program. We're going to work with selected startups and help them to integrate their products and solutions directly into those companies' value chain. And in the last phase of it, we will be working on a pre-acceleration program with those startups. So this program, this virtual agri-food program that we've been working on, the idea of it is to create this global conversation and helping startups to understand they can actually take any solution they're working on into different sections in the world, because the food is a conversation all across the globe. And since we are moving into a new normal, that means that all of the borders can diminish, and then we can think of it in a more global sense. So if you would like to know more about Kök Projekt or Agri-Food Connect program or any of the stuff that we do, you can just log into our website, which is kökprojekt.com. You can register to our newsletter, and also you can join in to our Slack space, which is the Kök community, which is a digital community where all of these, startups and sector representatives and ecosystem players within our network get together. And it's also free to join. So all you have to do is just log into our website and click the link. So that being said, let's move into today's topic. So this is our, I think the 6th or the 7th webinar, I have to check. But today we have Matthias Schmidt-Rex. He's the CEO of the SmartHectar Innovation. And we're gonna dive into the German ecosystem and also the EU region ecosystem on Agri-Food Sector. So thank you so much joining us today, Matthias. Thank you so much for your time today. I would love to pass the mic to you, and if you can just explain it, what is SmartHectar Innovation, what are you guys working on, and also your experience and also your role in SmartHectar. So thank you so much.
Sure. Okay, thanks, Semi, and thanks for your invitation. Happy to join your webinar today and to give you some insights, at least from my perspective, about the German ecosystem. Yeah, so let me give you some more background about SmartHectar Innovation. It's a company we founded 2017, end of 2017, more as a spin-off of another company that we are running called Go Silicon Valley. And SmartHectar is focusing on agri-food and water tech sectors. We are bringing together corporates on one side, startups on the other side, offering collaboration programs in order to develop new products, new services, new business models, whatever is needed and whatever it takes. Actually, we are working for corporates. That's our main target group. So corporates actually define whatever they want to work on with startups. Sometimes they're just looking for a startup scouting program, for example. They want to get into new kind of technologies, want to have an overview what's out there. In most cases, it's about collaboration programs. So they're very much interested in utilizing the technologies, the ideas of startups in order to improve their core business or get into new business fields, adjacent business areas, those kind of things. And we are running several innovation hubs globally since we made the experience here in Germany that corporates actually are not so mature in working together with startups. It's not so much about the money, surprisingly, but it's more about the resources and the internal organization. Because if you wanna start a collaboration program with startups, you have to have a dedicated team that is fully in charge of pushing the process forward. It's not only like going to the circus, seeing a startup for 1 hour, giving some applause, and then it's over, because the work actually starts right after this ideation phase. And yeah, so then we had to pivot actually our business model, because we wanted to start with an accelerator program here in Germany, and then we found out, okay, it's a saturated market. It's not such a high demand in enhancing your yield and those kind of things. It's more about efficiency. But when you look at the southern hemisphere, like West Africa in particular, where we are located, or Southeast Asia, where we met actually in Bangkok, there's a much higher demand. It's an rising middle class, and so there's a huge market potential. So we made the decision, okay, so then let's bring this idea of collaboration to these regions, and let's help improving people's life in the region. So, and that's actually what we're doing now. We have one innovation hub in Bangkok, one in Jakarta, and in West Africa, it's in Nigeria and in Ghana.
That's amazing. Yeah. I want to start right in with the, because since you mentioned the corporates, how do you see corporates are adjusting to the new normal? How do you see their approach? Are they more positive on startups now? Are they, more afraid? Like, how's your experience so far?
Okay, so actually, I would say it goes in two directions. One is and then of course we are quite lucky about that. Corporates are really interested, even more interested right now to work together with startups, because compared to your own R&D process, it's much cheaper, it's more efficient, you are more ahead of any kind of technology than asking your own R&D guys, which of course goes on and on. But that's something where corporates, from our perspective, want to really get into it. On the other hand, you have, of course, corporates that are postponing or even canceling their projects, like innovation projects, because, yeah, I can't give you names, of course, but corporates are more into focusing on their core business and focusing on business areas with revenues right away. So they are really into, like, what brings money to the table, and not so much into investing in any kind of innovation programs where they don't see. I mean, for a number of corporates, it's like a black box. They invest something in a process where they don't know what comes actually out of it. What's the benefit for us? And
Right.
you cannot predict it, right? So it can be a success, it can be a failure. That's the way.
I mean, absolutely, of course. And that being said, let's move into the German ecosystem.
Yeah.
Since I know you guys are all around the globe, like we're talking about Southeast Asia, Western Africa,
Hmm.
and Germany. Like there are quite different ecosystems and quite different needs and interests and potentials, of course. But if we look into the work that you guys do in Germany, and also the positioning German ecosystem in European region, how do you define the German ecosystem compared to the Europe, or which position you are setting in?
Okay, so I mean, I would say among the biggest countries in Europe, Germany is at the bottom line. I think in terms of investments, it ranks at number 5 or 6, something like that. And if you look at the German startup ecosystem, the agri-food sector is also at the bottom line. So that's the sector with the least investments. And as I said before, it's pretty hard, I would say, for a German agri startup to get into the market, because it's very fragmented. It's a decreasing number of farmers in the country, and they are already quite mature in terms of digitalized processes, for example. So you have a running system, and if you want to come up with a new idea, with a new technology, you have somehow to show and to make sure that you can integrate your technology right away into an existing process. And this is pretty tough, I would say, for startups. And then also, I would say that quite a lot of startups don't really know how the whole process of a farmer looks like. It's very, very different, for example, if we compare to the situation in Africa, because there, most of the startups, they know exactly what kind of problems smallholder farmers are facing, because all their, or a certain number of their family members,
Right.
they're into this kind of business. And that's a different thing here in Germany. You come from a university, or I don't know, you've worked in another startup before, and then you might think, oh, this kind of technology could fit into the agriculture sector, so let's try it, without having any kind of experience how the business actually works.
Right. Interesting. This is something really interesting. I wasn't expecting that. Reason being, for me, in my mind, because maybe I don't have, enough knowledge. But like, since talking about, if I made the food revolution in Germany with, securing the production lines, and also the green flag, and the interest in organic produce and the consumption habits, asking questions, the German consumer asking a lot of questions like, what are we getting, what are we eating, and all that. So that means, regarding the interest, and also for an agri-food sector, startups, it's quite less compared to the other sectors then, or is it rising, coming to the occasion with the prices, or do you think will it, go like this?
So I would say food is another thing. I was just talking about the agriculture sector. We are somehow dividing into agri-food, so agriculture and food. Of course, there's, innovative food system, of course, but it's more into, delivery companies. But of course, you have also startups like Infarm with, I don't know, Series B or C right now with $100 million. They're pretty successful, of course. But still, it's very difficult to get into the retail market. Of course, there are also corporates like Marley Spoon, offering what they have to end consumers, and that works pretty well. Even now, because of COVID-19 negative consequences, because people are ordering more from home and so, and that's pretty good for all the delivery services. So I would say that's a different thing, but still, companies, startups like Infarm, that's the exception. We still have a gap of investment here in Germany. The German, let's say, the German investment culture is still kind of risk averse. So that means if you're looking for, let's say, business angels or even institutional investment partners, it's pretty tough business to start your fundraising rounds here. So, and that's one of the reasons I would say why quite a lot of startups also, trying to get in contact with VCs from Silicon Valley, for example, UK and so on, because, you have a much broader number of investment partners that are willing to invest into the agriculture sector or the food sector.
I understand. That's really interesting. And I remember that SmartHectar also collaborates with governmental organizations as well, and this is also the case in Germany as well. So how do you define that collaboration? Like, do you providing opportunities for startups to being able to integrate their solutions directly to the production, or this is something that is used based on, like, how's that connection works? Because I would love to use it as an example, and then maybe the other ecosystems can actually, develop.
Okay, so how we actually start the business is talking first of all to corporates and see what are they up to in terms of getting new technologies or innovative ideas on board. And so whenever they define their criteria, their search fields, then we start a scouting process based on their defined criteria. And then it's kind of a matchmaking process. Actually, we bring together these two parties and then we start a facilitated process. Since, as I said, most of the corporates are not really experienced in kind of an agile developing process. And it's, I would say, also somehow under time pressure, because we're really looking into, to be resource efficient. And that means 3 to 5 days, more or less, having a collaboration process. But then the corporate is in a position where they can make a decision. Okay, do we want to go on with this startup or this number of startups in whatever is then necessary to push the development process any further? It can be that they start a strategic partnership, simple cooperation, or even want to invest in one or some of the startups. But first of all, out of this collaboration process, they have a tangible result. Is it an MVP, a POC, whatever it is? But it's not this kind of a black box anymore. So and then compared to an accelerator program where they usually, spend a couple of months before they get any kind of tangible result, and they probably have to invest much more money. It's a fast track business development process for them, for both sides actually. Yeah,
that's excellent. And how do you compare the involvement of since we're talking about three geographies at once when we look at the SmartHectar?
yeah.
I mean, they're totally different than each other. How do you compare the interest within all of these organizations that you collaborate with? As you mentioned, you're talking about corporates, you're talking about governmental organizations. How do you compare that with Germany to Southeast Asia and West Africa? Is it more, for example, in West Africa is more governmental involved, but Southeast Asia is more corporate side. In Germany, it's rather than private, private capital. How do you differentiate this ecosystem?
That's an interesting question, and let me start with West Africa, where we also started, I think, beginning of last year, our kickoff event in Ghana. So when we presented our business model of collaboration, bringing these two parties together, the first questions I was confronted with is, who's your donor? So it's not like with whom are you working with in terms of what kind of corporates, but who's the NGO that is, I don't know, giving you any kind of grants, supporting you, because it's they are already used to it, to get money from governmental organizations. But I think like corporates from the regions, they have to learn, from my understanding, what is actually out there in terms of technologies they can incorporate, startups that are worth to be supported from their side, so that they can from their side, so that they can get also access to the market, to new target groups and those kind of things. So it's not a walk in the park, I would say, to convince corporates, local corporates, but they get it. They get it, and they're always happy when we involve them in a challenge, so that they can first of all see and make their first experiences, how it looks like and what they can get out of it. But to be honest, first of all, we are starting with multinationals, companies based in Germany, but also active in these kind of regions, and then it's this kind of way, and then we also involve corporates from the regions. But for example, in Thailand right now, we are working with one of the biggest conglomerates in food, and one of their strategic pillars is collaboration with startups. And once we started the project, they were really, really fast, even though that they have no experience at all in setting up this kind of projects and so on, but they are really willing, and they have the right team in place, the right people. So they're really pushing it forward, and that was a really, really fast process, I would say, like I've never experienced before. Germany is, so I would say corporates are very interested, but it takes a lot of time. It's like working with governmental organizations. So in terms of time you have to invest, it takes really some time before they have all the processes in place that are actually needed. Like having the teams that are fully dedicated to this collaboration processes, for example, or having like stakeholders on board that are also able to open doors in the internal organizations to involve other experts and so on. That takes some time.
Do you think this crisis will speed this up? That process of all of these organizations being more open and being more startup friendly, and being as you mentioned, there are some costs, but also we're talking about this takes time. but rather we're, moving into a new normal and talking about, like we need hygienic food production now. We need this kind of like a production yesterday, etc. So all of these, demands are becoming more vast and more, see-through, and all of these companies, need to adapt in one point, one way or another. Do you think this will speed this up? Do you think that transformation on their behalf, or not? I mean, just because
That's yeah. So it's pretty hard to predict, but so according to the calls that I had with corporates, especially here in Germany, I would say they're really more focusing on the core business right now and postponing these kind of projects.
Right.
I think if you see it from a global perspective, definitely there have to be a change in the supply chain management
Right.
actually. Yeah, for example, if you look at Thailand and Nigeria, where we are active. So Nigeria is very much depending on rice imports from Thailand. But what happened during the Corona crisis is that Thailand closed the borders and stopped exporting rice, and that means they are facing a serious famine right now in Nigeria.
Wow.
But on the other side, it really gives them a push to think about what could be a sustainable business perspective for us, because there are rice farmers out there, they have water irrigation systems there. So it's this kind of, let's get rid of importing for billions of dollars food from all over the globe, and then just try to improve our food production right here. So, and that's actually right now what happens, not only from the startup side, but also from the corporate side. The government is trying it very hard to implement new structures and giving money to smallholder farmers and so on. So it could be a good way, to change this kind of the global food supply chain.
That's I mean, that's one of the best examples I've heard, because like, when you talk about the change, the digitalization and startup culture and all that, but one of the topics of when you move into the agri-food sector, any problems in this scale, we are reaching famine in 2 months. Like, it's just so quick and so impactful, and any of the technologies or solutions that can be adapted to all of these farmers in Nigeria, it would benefit them on their food security, which is the next topic we're going to dive in. But that also affects the farmers in Thailand, because they're not be able to maybe sell that much rice to Nigeria, and that the whole balance shifts and changes. It's a century-old conversation, of course, the whole idea of globalization and food production, etc. But for today, we can talk about rather the food security side of it. So, with your experience, in Germany, of course, but I mean in West Africa and also in Southeast Asia, how do you see the trend and interest with the food security? The rice is a great example, but is there any startups, or as an example, you would like to talk about within all of these regions that you are working on, or any of the solutions that have been adapted with the crisis? Is any of the startups, as an example, comes up to your mind, who are working
So
on security?
there's some startups. So I would say in general, what we see in Africa, for example, also in Southeast Asia, a lot of startups actually from Indonesia. They are not offering only, let's say, one product, because they have a full understanding of the problems of smallholder farmers. And if you wanna do business with smallholder farmers, you have to make sure that they can afford to, let's say, to buy your product, your technology, whatever it is.
Right.
And so if you look at the smallholder farmers, I mean, most of them, they don't have a bank account, they don't have a credibility, they don't have a history. So startups actually offering the product itself, but also expanding services, for example, to help farmers to get financial instruments.
Right.
And that's increasing right now because smallholder farmers are really suffering from COVID-19 consequences,
Right.
especially in these kind of regions, because there's a lockdown, you're not able to go to the market, you cannot sell your products anymore. You have this food loss, harvest post harvest loss, all those kind of things. That's pretty tough. So these startups have to think about what can we do in order to support a better logistics service, a
Mhm.
better cooling system, for example, better access to the market or even to the end consumer.
Right.
And I think this will definitely increase right now. I mean, as far as I can see that, at least in these regions. And and this is also a difference to Germany or to Europe. I would say startups in Africa very strong in adapting existing technologies and applying it to the regional markets rather than developing top-notch technologies, something like that, which is there, of course, like in Nigeria and South Africa and in Kenya. But in general, I would say they're more looking into what's already out there. What can we use? What can we, let's say, like adjust here and there, and then apply to our market and to the conditions on the ground.
Right. Right.
And
Right.
that's I would say a huge advantage because they're pretty fast. They're pretty fast in adapting and in adjusting and going to market.
That's I think one of the questions when we talk about agri-tech or any of the conversation I listen into, it always comes down to the question that how are you going to integrate these technologies directly into the value chain? How are you going to convince the farmers, the producers to use these technologies, to listen the data that you provide? It's also a great challenge for startups, but it's also, as you
Absolutely.
mentioned, it's also quickly there's the potential of quickly adapting to the reality and using all of these technologies. So we're not actually, looking into a future that try to convince the farmers, but rather than providing these tools for them on a, hands reach, if I may. And this will definitely, benefit the whole value chain. And we're
Right.
talking about, geographies that are, need quite heavily on the food security and the food sovereignty. That's also touching base with the food sovereignty. But if we move into the the next phase of that, we talked about food sovereignty, food security, and let's move into the food safety side. How do you envision this, the change in the agri-food sector? We're talking about hygiene rules, but it's also, as you mentioned, the producers going out to farms and for the harvest, and there's this sort of like a fear of contamination with the products, and also we're talking about how we're going to able to track all of these produce, etc. So how's the conversation in Germany on the sense of food safety? Is there any examples or any of the topics that you would like to share with us?
Yeah, to be honest, I'm not so much into the details to that question, so I cannot really answer your question in detail because so the situation, I would say, still is pretty new, and what I've learned and experienced is that there are various ways to cope with this situation. I mean, you probably have heard about the farmers bringing in from Bulgaria and from Poland to harvest the asparagus here and so on. Yeah, so that was kind of weird, I would say. Even though you have a lockdown, so please make sure that all the supermarkets will have enough from our asparagus in here. Besides that, I would say it was pretty normal.
Okay.
Because on German farms, as I said before, it's they have already a high level of efficiency of mechanization and so on. So it's not so much depending on labor work, on headcount,
Right. Right.
despite, for example, of course, asparagus and so on. But besides that, I would say they're highly efficient already. So it doesn't affect so much the farmer on his farmland, but more the supply chain then, you know. So what happens once you've harvested whatever you have on the field, and then, you know, just bringing it into the supply chain again. But as we could see, at least here in Germany, there was never kind of a crisis or lack of supply or something like
Right.
that.
Right. And since we're talking about, you know, food safety, one of the topics comes up. It's actually, you know, slowly, but into the picture is that the processed foods. Reason being the fear of contamination and fear of, you know, the fresh foods would go bad compared to the processed foods, and the idea of, you know, stocking your fridge more than you used to, stocking your you know, having more supplies at your home, etc. How do you see the processed food, you know, demand rising, and then the effects to the agri-food chain? Do you think it will affect it positively, since, you know, the processed food will require, you know, all of these, you know, buying all these products in bulk and turning them into something, you know, added value? Or do you think this will go away after, you know, things are going to slightly back to normal? Or this is something that, you
Yeah.
know, the rise back of the processed foods?
So I don't think that it will affect food security that much, so that we are facing, you know, problems in terms of contamination and so on. Because if you see what the scientists are saying, actually, and there's no real existing danger in, you know, having contaminated food products out
Right.
there,
Right.
right? So, and I think it will go back to normal, whatever it is. But people, of course, right now they're pretty aware, especially end consumers and so on. If you go to the supermarket and, you know, I don't know, you have to cough by accident, then, you know,
Right.
they look, you know, like really weird.
Right.
But in general, you know, I mean, people touching fruits and everything on the
Right.
shelves and so on, but still they just take it, and then they pay, and then they go home. So that's it, right?
Of course.
So, and I think this will, I don't like the term, but this will go away.
Right. I see. I understand. I mean, as you mentioned, because, you know, the idea of, you know, touching the fresh food and then, you know, someone else touching it, etc. All of these concerns are changing, you know, how people buy their foods as well, and changing the demand in a way, as you mentioned, all of these deliveries, and changing, you know, the change in the value chain itself. Since we're talking about change, and things can go back to normal as well, as you know, in our organization as well, and the other organizations I, you know, have a chat with too, do you see, you know, SmartHectar moving into the more, you know, the digital field regarding the work that you do? Or do you think that this will also go back to normal, as in, like, you know, I wanted to, you know, really ask, you know, in our you know, in this section, that, you know, the future of SmartHectar innovation, do you guys gonna, you know, change how, you know, approach
I
to?
can't hear you anymore. I lost you
Can you hear me now?
30 seconds ago or so.
Oh, can you hear me now?
Oh, now, yeah, now I can hear you again. Yeah, great. Okay,
Sure.
can you just repeat the last
Absolutely.
sentence?
Absolutely, I can. I was just asking, since we're talking about the future and changes, I wanted to, you know, slowly come into the subject of the future of, you know, SmartHectar innovation. You know, since all of these, you know, all these, you know, startup programs and all these activities in this field are moving towards the virtual field rather than the physical. You know, but you know, you guys have, you know, a space in West Africa, in Southeast Asia, in Germany. Are you, you know, since you are also the CEO, do you see the future of, you know, SmartHectar moving to the virtual field as well, or rather than just, you know, going back to normal too? Because since it's agriculture,
Yeah.
you can't really do that. But I wanted to just, you know, have your opinion on that.
Yeah, yeah. So of course, some of our formats, it's it's possible to have some kind of online formats, but in general, the huge benefit of our programs if people come together, stick together, work together, with a high density, and that's the beauty of this collaborative processes. There's always more coming out than you would have expected, because like the one we are now preparing in Bangkok. So we have the business unit guys from our customers, so 4 business units, so means 8 people. We have like 12 startups, more than 20 people, right. And they're all pushing themselves and working on new ideas, adding new value. And so I don't think this will change, and I don't think that we are able to set up almost the same process with the same results in online formats. I think this will not happen.
Got it. Sure. I wanted to move into a question from our participants. Didam is asking, what are a few enablers for consumer behavior change that you and the ecosystem can influence changes?
So we are not really working with end consumers. What we do is we are helping, first of all, corporates to work together with startups, and we are helping startups to get fundraising ready and to get into the market. And then it's actually their business to work with end consumers and maybe change their behavior, their way of buying procedures, whatever it is. So we are not really much into that. What we are trying is to change the way corporate guys are thinking,
right?
And the way, or at least we are trying that they integrate a new pillar into their innovation strategy. So this is our main task, actually, when we are working together with corporates. Sorry for that, but I can't help you in this case.
Excellent. I think these are my questions. You were really to the point, and I wanted to slowly moving into our closing session, that since we talked about food security, food safety, food sovereignty, and I think one of the the great keynotes in this conversation that we have is definitely the food security side of it, since we're talking about adaptations of the corporates, but in the meantime the effects on the whole value chain and the change of it. And one of the takes that I understand is that Germany as the ecosystem, agri-food is not that has an interest compared to the other sectors, but that doesn't mean the startups are not moving to the field, but rather than also looking into investment outside, but rather than coming back to integrate their solution in Germany too. And we're talking about also adapting all of these solutions into West Africa and Southeast Asia. And do you see any other region will to the map of are there any other regions that are you guys using?
Simi, sorry, I lost you again. The last 15 seconds, something like that. Just I don't know. There's something wrong with the mic or so.
Can you hear me?
Yeah. Okay. Now I can hear you again.
Yeah, absolutely. I was just asking, since we are moving into the last section of our talk, I was curious, since all of the expertise that you guys have with the Southeast Asia and also the West Africa, when we talked about a lot food security and food safety and food sovereignty, are there any other regions that will come up to your map in the upcoming, that to adapt all of the expertise and the knowledge that you guys have to the other regions in the world? I was just
Okay. I mean, it's always good to have a look at Silicon Valley and New York, of course. I mean, New York is a hotspot for, food startups, pretty strong, especially in the end consumer sector. Silicon Valley, even though it's very expensive and not affordable anymore for
Right.
most of the startups actually to get something started there. But California is the salad bowl of the US, so there's still a number of startups, and it's always good to have a look at them in terms of technology and what they're actually offering. And then of course Israel. I mean, you know, Tel Aviv. I don't know. There are more than 6,000 startups. A lot into agriculture, into food, and also into water. So we are just into our startup scouting process, and it's really amazing what these guys are doing. And I would say that also India and Pakistan are pretty strong in the agriculture and also the food sector. You know, these guys, they just coming back from abroad, they studied somewhere in the world and then coming back to their countries and starting their business there. And of course, the market is just huge. So yeah, they're really interesting regions, I would say. Yeah, I mean, and of course, in Europe, you have France, you have the UK. Yeah, I would say these are the strongest countries in Europe when it comes to agri-food and investments. So that's a good indicator that shows the level of activities and the maturity level. So yeah, I would say more or less that's it.
Excellent. Awesome. I think that's it. Awesome. I mean, thank you so much for all of this, Matthias. I think it was really insightful to hear, you know, your experience in not just in Germany, but all of these, you know, sections in the world, and the work and the expand of the, you know, the SmartHectar Innovation. Is there anything you would like to add as a sign off, or anything you wanted to, you know, suggest to our, you know, for people watching this to check out, you know, the work of SmartHectar Innovation, or to apply? Do you guys accept, you know, startups outside of Germany to Germany? Is there anything you would like to add as a last words?
Yeah, so just kind of a promotion tour. We are starting our application process for our innovation challenge in Bangkok in June. I keep you updated, and you can also check our LinkedIn profile. And just some, or at least one advice to startups, if they would like to get in contact with corporates, I think it's always a good opportunity to go to one of these trade fairs, like the Agri-Technica in Germany or the one in Bangkok in October. Right. Because from my experience, corporate guys are very open, even though, you know, they are very limited in terms of time and so on. But if you have a pitch deck ready and you just can pitch your idea right away, or you have a use case, something like that, that's, I would say, very good idea. And yeah, mostly you just speak to the right people there, you know, like business development, sales guys, and they can always make an introduction to someone else who's then more in charge of this kind of requests. So yeah, that would be my advice.
Excellent. Awesome. For, you know, joining us today to our, you know, to our webinar, and sharing all of the insights and expertise and the work that you guys are doing with the SmartHectar Innovation. And I wanted to thank everyone who's, you know, who joined to our webinar as well, and also the people who are watching. You're gonna able to find this recording of the webinar in our YouTube channel as well. If you log into Kök Projekt in YouTube, you're gonna find our webinar session with Matthias and the other webinars that we do. And we hope to see you in the next one. So thank you so much for everyone joining us, and thank you so much, Matthias, for, you know, for your time. So see you next time.
Thanks for having me. Yeah, see you around. Thank you very much.
Take care.
All right. Bye-bye.